Good day, goeiedag, fellow South Africans. And I left this particular subject as a separate video because it is so incredibly important. It is the elephant in the room, and I didn't want it to get lost with the other issues we talked about. And the elephant in the room is a result of things like MS-13, the whole way the moral society in America is breaking down. And it's all about the drug crisis. Okay, let's go into some details. In the last year, over 72,000 Americans have died as a direct result of overdosing with drugs. That's 72,000 people. Most of these deaths are not through cocaine or LSD, but through opioids, often bought through prescription at the pharmacy. Consider this fact. Ellis Park in Johannesburg, when full, takes just over 60,000 people. Add 20% and you get close to the number of deaths from drug overdoses in America in the last year. Think about that. Even taking opioids at the prescribed rate often leads to addiction. As a result, the deaths are increasingly exponentially, and while Obama did nothing to remedy the situation, President Trump has. The most ostracized president by the media has actually done something to try and counter the drug problems in America. He is pouring $1 billion into the Opioid Crisis Response Act of 2018. It's aimed at removing addictive opioids from the system, treating victims and finding alternative non-addictive drugs to treat issues like pain. Trump is also trying to build a wall on his southern border with Mexico where drugs pour in. Of course, the Democrats, which I covered in my previous video, are using their votes in the Senate to block this very sensible move. Why wouldn't you want to protect your citizens from people coming in with drugs and killing? You know, they're just pouring the drugs in and taking the money and don't care how many people die as a result of the drugs that they bring in. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy in America. Many of the people I spoke to over the last week have confessed that they have one or more friends or family members addicted to opioids or other drugs which are being brought in from the southern border through Mexico. It is that invasive in American society. Just walking down the streets of New York City, I passed dozens of mainly men lying asleep or in a drug-induced coma on the sidewalks. If you come to New York and you just walk down 9th Avenue or 7th Avenue, within a couple of 100 meters you'll see someone lying on the side of the road, totally out of it, spaced out on drugs. And it's all over New York. It's absolutely crazy. And this is during the day. And their bodies are scattered around the city and are today pretty much part of the scenery. It is almost like, you know, hey, this is New York. There are a few bodies lying over there. They're just on drugs. It's crazy. But opioids is only part of the story. MS-13, which I talked about in my earlier video, which is this gang that come from South America, and they are now using violence to intimidate communities. They have infiltrated many public schools in America, and drugs like cocaine that are addictive are offered to other children by young gang members in the school grounds. And just to prove my point, and I've got a link below to the article, this is just an extract from one of the many news reports on this particular subject. Here we go. Gang-related fights are now a near daily occurrence at WIRT, that's W-I-R-T, where a small group of suspected MS-13 members at the overwhelmingly Hispanic school in Prince George's County throw gang signs, sell drugs, draw gang graffiti, and aggressively recruit students recently arrived from Central America, according to more than 24 teachers, parents, and students. Now, just like in my case, where I could talk to them, privately, but they wouldn't go on camera, the article continues. Most of those interviewed asked not to be identified for fear of losing their jobs or being targeted by MS-13. I think you can see what's happening here. Okay, so as I said, the article's linked below. Now, continuing on. There is a lot more I could say about the drug issue in America, but I do not want to labour the point. It's a very complex issue with, for example, some states allowing people to grow cannabis at home for their own use, others allowing people to buy cannabis for medicinal purposes, and other states where you can be arrested for possessing cannabis. So cannabis is a fairly low addictive drug, and most people say it's not addictive and it's actually got medicinal purposes. But the point is that all these different states have different laws related to something as simple as cannabis, and yet opioids are prevalent right through there, and opioids are the big killer in America. And of course, the drugs coming from the south through Mexico are the second biggest killer in America. Now, drug abuse affects at least one member in nearly every family in America. It's a huge problem that your children will have to confront if you migrate to the USA. They'll have to confront it because they will come across it in the schools, and they'll come across it as they grow up, and they have a decision to make. And that's why it's such a big problem here in the USA. Now let's look at the situation in Australia. According to the Pennington Institute, and you can Google their report on drug deaths, just over 2,000 Australians died from drug overdoses in the last year. Australia has a population of about 25 million, against the USA's population of 325 million, or a factor of 13. Simple maths shows us that if Australia had a population the size of America, the death toll from drug overdoses in Australia this year would be just 26,000. That figure is 46,000 less than the deaths from drug overdoses in America today. Just 35% of the American deaths directly related to drug overdoses. You can see why I call this the elephant in the room. In Australia, the drug issue is addressed by education, direct to children in the classroom, and any child stupid enough to try to sell drugs in a public school is immediately reported to teachers and expelled. This is a huge divergence from the out-of-control situation in America. There is no MS-13 in Australia. Finally, we are the lucky country because we're in an island. And most of our neighbours, like Malaysia, execute drug traffickers, closing their route to Australia from the north. Any drugs that do reach Australia come from South America by way of boat. And our custom officials are well aware of that and have made huge drug busts like cocaine, ecstasy and LSD and the more recent exotic drugs hard to come by, and as a result very expensive. So drug addiction is not as prevalent as it is in America because we are kind of isolated, whereas the southern border of the USA through Mexico, bang, in they come. And of course the Democrats are preventing the wall, so they can just basically walk through with their drugs and then go and sell them to their mates. Drug abuse will always be a challenge in Australia, and the only thing I can say about that is that at least it's not out of control like it is in America. And it doesn't look like it's going to get any better unless Trump can get that wall built. All right, guys, that's the final issue I wanted to raise from my American trip. I did want to make a special point on the drug issue because it is a huge, huge issue that you need to consider for your family and your kids when they're at school, you know, because they're actually gonna come across this because it's that bad. Alrighty, I hope this has helped, and look at the links below because they will give you some more information. Cheers.